Fiorella, how's it going? You're back in Moscow, huh?
I am back in Moscow. I was going to say the USSR, but it's no longer the USSR. But that's a song. So yeah, I literally was just on a show with Pasta, and somehow I'm here today.
How
It's
did you
just
do
my
that?
whole time is messed up. It's flights and they're long, and yeah, but
Oh my gosh. So you were in Florida with Pasta. Now you're back in the USSR with the homeless left coming to you from Hollywood. This is what a crazy mixed up world we are in. But it's great to have these conversations, and thanks for. I mean, seriously. I mean, I'm very like humbled you took the time after the crazy flight like that to come in and say hi on our 100th show. So thank you.
of
Um,
course.
yes. So let's this one issue I wanted to bring up because we've been kind of following this the whole time. I know you've been covering it on Truthwire, but I don't think you and I had a chance to talk about it particularly. And this is the El Salvador the situation where Trump has been sending people to El Salvador. There's been this arrangement where and some people are calling this government sanctioned human trafficking, where there's a price tag on the heads of people. He's going right to the president of El Salvador saying, we're dropping these people in with you. Venezuelan people, oh no, they're part of a gang. They're part of a gang from Venezuela, so we're just going to drop them in El Salvador. But then we had this man that was wrongfully arrested in Maryland, sent mistakenly. We know Trump admitted it was a mistake. But now for some reason, and the president of El Salvador arrives in DC, and all of a sudden Trump is acting like it was not a mistake, and this was always the plan. And he literally has the president of El Salvador coming here, teaming up with him to tell the U.S. press the fake news, telling them that was never the plan. There's no way this guy is getting out of there. As we're following this, Fee, what are you seeing on from your take? I mean, did you see this coming? Could you have anticipated that the president of El Salvador and Trump sitting together, just basically neck and neck, just exactly in line with their talking points, striking at the mainstream media and having their thugs do it too? Like they all were lined up, just saying, no, this is how it is. That's it. End of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what we all warned people the Trump administration would do, right? In terms of Latin America, his pursuit against the other. So the Biden administration uses this sort of, we're going to build humanitarian bridges and provide humanitarian aid and democracy to Latin America. And they were super focused on Russia, Ukraine. Well, Donald Trump comes in, and this administration's focus is the Middle East, Latin America, and China. And so it's very much pushed via the anti-communist type of ideological agenda. However, it's obviously driven by economics. The anti-communist thing has always been just what they use. And so with El Salvador's president, Nayib Bukele, Bukele is this sort of new crypto guy. He's the guy that's come in and tried to wow the youth, providing an alternative. And he came out as somebody that was anti-establishment, but he actually isn't, and he never was. And so Donald Trump has latched on to the likes of him and the likes of Javier Milei in Argentina, and the likes of pretty much anybody that provides an anti-socialist or leftist approach in Latin America. But what people in the United States need to know, when we talk about far right in Latin America, we mean military gangs, cartels, like narco governments that are literally defined fascistic by definition. And we're not talking about, what people in the US think about when they think of far right. We're talking about paramilitary gangs. And this type of government has existed in Latin America for decades. And in order to understand what's happening with Donald Trump right now, there needs to be an understanding as to what happened in Central America and how El Salvador got to where it's at. El Salvador has been in a fight where the anti-imperialist in El Salvador haven't had power for a very long time. And the wars in Central America that also involved Nicaragua and Guatemala, all of this was pushed via the war on drugs. And so we're seeing all of this come to fruition now, with Donald Trump aligning himself with this type of government that is extremely authoritarian, extremely uses the idea of law and order to eradicate civil rights, to eradicate any sort of human rights due process that people may have. So Bukele is operating this way, and Trump thinks it's a good business deal to throw in prisoners that are in the United States being held, or people that are not even being held, and to pretty much take them and put them in this foreign prison without any sort of due process. And people say, well, they're not US citizens. Okay, but they're also going after US residents, green card holders, which if you're a resident in any other country, you have almost the same rights, not entirely, but very close rights to citizens, and you should be treated with respect as well. And if you're not a citizen, if you're just somebody that's a tourist or somebody that has a visa, you also have rights. And even if you don't have any of that, you have international rights as a human being. So what Trump is doing now is actually lending credibility to the liberals, right? When they say, oh, Trump's a fascist, well, he is acting quite fascistically in this sense, in this term, but that is his role, because now in come Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats pretending that they don't do the same things or similar things in other ways. So did I predict that Trump would be like this? To a degree, I'm not surprised, but this is taking it to another level, as we have heard Carolyn Leavitt, his press secretary, and him multiple times say that they are willing to put U.S. citizens in these types of foreign prisons. And that is a step too far. Even the fact that they even talked about it is a step too far, even if they don't seek to do it. And so when you talk about this man, his name was Gilmar Abrego Garcia. Yeah. This man was just completely sent there, despite not actually being guilty of what he was accused of. And they both know it, as you said. And now he is being left there without any sort of procedure to get him out. And this is despite the courts. This is despite senators. There's a Maryland senator, Chris Van Hollen, who also said that he wasn't allowed to go in to the prison. And Trump and Bukele are both like washing their hands off this whole thing. And they're saying, oh yeah, well, I can't do, Trump's like, I can't do anything. And Bukele's like, well, I can't do anything. He's from a foreign country. So it's like, well, if you both can't do anything now, how could you do something in the first place? Like what exactly, like if you couldn't do anything, then why did you actually deport this person into a foreign prison? And further, if you can't now do anything, and Bukele comes in saying we don't want terrorists back, you're accusing this guy of something he isn't. You're prolonging this lie, and you're acting like this person is an international threat or a threat to El Salvador or the United States, which he isn't. And this is setting a very dangerous precedent, because as they've already talked about, this is just going to go on and on until it comes down basically on the US, on the American public. And if you don't care about this morally happening to somebody, a human being, and if that doesn't matter to you, well, I hope at the very least people in the United States wake up to see that it could happen to them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%. This is where, when you don't have the principle moral compass like you should have, but you put tribalism first, you're going to go and bend over backwards for all the different twists and turns for that person you're idolizing. You're going to miss the real story. And on the left side, we're not seeing the real story either. So I just want to, this gets a little complicated for people that need to understand that the reason we do our shows is we're taking this non-tribal point of view. And this story is so important because it's got so many levels to it. And unless you're actually having discussions in a non-tribal arena, you're going to miss the story. So let's just quickly go through this, because I pulled the files here so we can just kind of show people. The Independent reported that this was an accident. Trump administration accidentally sent the Salvadorian immigrants. So we got to remember, they said it was a mistake. This is on record. It was not supposed to happen. It went against the protection that he had to not send them there. But then we fast forward and we have this saying that they're not going to return him, even though he was wrongfully deported. And then they start coming up with this language about, well, here are the other things he's guilty of. We found out, Fee, that now they're talking about his wife. There's records of him with other violent situations that have nothing to do with this, but they're trying to basically paint him as somebody who does have connection to a gang, does have connections, does have a criminal record. So they're trying to spin it now after the fact, but they're trying to rewrite the fact that this was the order of the way things happen, and particularly this part's very important, that the Supreme Court, even though they ruled 9-0 against this is the part that no one's talking about. And I just wanted to take this tweet. The Supreme Court is being devoured by a monster in his own creation. In other words, he's ignoring the 9-0 vote after the court in 2024 stupidly granted the president immunity from prosecution. So this is, again, you're not going to hear this on CNN or MSNBC. They're going to say, "Oh, Trump is being a fascist," but they're not saying that you guys already had this previous term where you're manipulating the judicial system to the point to give the president more power than he should have had, and that was the banana republic that Biden was heading at the time, and now it's being thrown right back in their face. And the last point I'll make before I throw it to you is that they had this press conference. They had the CNN there just so they could all yell and scream at CNN about, how dare you ask about this guy? There's no way he's coming back. He's a gang member. The Supreme Court. Meanwhile, mainstream media, MSNBC, CNN, they're reporting that this is a race issue, that our president is racist. And that's the problem. And we're not getting to the heart of this, which you mentioned, Fee. It's about taking away due process. And there's nobody in the MAGA side that is pointing this out. And the Democrats are too stupid to think it's more than about race. And here we are having this discussion. It's a lot. And I feel winded even going through this, but here we are. This guy's in El Salvador. He's not going to come out. He's in the super prison. And to add fuel to the fire, some are saying he might already be dead, and there's not even a way to get him out anyways.
It's really insane because people assume that this person is just an MS-13 gang member, so they've tuned out the story, and that's what mainstream media uses it to justify. It doesn't matter if it's, Trump. I mean, the only reason this is even being talked about at all, it's because it is Trump. Because if Biden were doing the same thing, we wouldn't be hearing about it. The Democrats don't care about anything that's been laid out, as you pointed out, because all of this was laid out before this second Trump administration. So a lot of the things that Trump is doing are continuing Biden's foreign policy. What Biden did was continue Trump's, and what Trump did was continue Obama's, and so on and so forth. And so everything, including the immigration issue, has been laid out for a president to exploit the situation or take it over, depending on what's politically expedient for their base. And we know that one of the biggest things for the right in the United States is immigration, but they never want to talk about immigration as to what led to that immigration issue. What has led to the MS-13 gangs? What has led to the Tren de Aragua gangs? All of the gangs and the situations and the cartels have been fueled, if not created, the same way they were created. Al-Qaeda and all these radical white helmets and the moderate rebels were created in Syria and Afghanistan, Iraq, in the Middle East, throughout the West Asian region. They did the same thing in Latin America. So I go back to this all the time, because if we want to tackle immigration, it needs to be done in a way that's lawful, that is just, and has a fair approach. What we're doing is literally criticizing the communists, because you always hear the criticism of communism and Stalin and all the stuff and gulags, and literally we are taking people internationally, not even nationally. It's not just one government doing it. It's literally Trump and Bukele capturing people from foreign countries and foreign governments and putting them in a foreign prison. So this is, if you want to talk about the right-wing definition of a gulag, then this is 10,000 times worse than that. We're literally taking people without any sort of proof. And this is the crazy thing about hypocrisy, as you laid out. There's a lot of people that would be against this right now that support Donald Trump, that are from the right, that are justifying what's happening right now because it's Donald Trump, because Donald Trump can do no wrong. Thankfully, I have seen a great number of his supporters also criticize him for this, looking at how this is leading down the path of the surveillance state, right? But in all of what's happening in El Salvador, we have to look at the foreign policy aspect of why is this happening now? Well, when we look at Nicaragua, we look at one of the countries that has withstood U.S. Foreign intervention for a long time. Daniel Ortega is getting up there in age. Okay, he's much older, and he has a lot of support every single time they have elections, and they will have an election next year. The United States says that this election is a sham election. They say that the election isn't real, that he has jailed his political opponents, same things that they say about Russia, or that they say about, they said about Syria, etc. And they also now have an opportunity, because El Salvador has a president that falls in line now with this type of anti-communist, anti-socialist, anti-left in Central America type of foreign policy, where they want to open things up with the United States. Panama is going back to the United States right now. So you have El Salvador, you have Panama, and Honduras is also having an election this year. And Xiomara Castro, who was the wife of formerly couped the president of Honduras, Manuel Zelaya, who literally was couped under the Democrats, under the Obama administration in 2009, they are also being targeted because of their growing relationship with China and their growing stances against what the United States is doing in Venezuela and all over the place. And so when you look at that region, you see this as a perfect opportunity. This is why there have been connections made with Javier Milei, and now with the Ecuadorian apparently elected, right? Because that's under contention, Daniel Noboa, who is like that election is completely just full of so many things. And you have to look at this and say, okay, well, who played a huge role in the Salvadorian civil war that has led to these gangs and all of these disruptions in government? It was the CIA. And exactly. That is a fact. This is not for debate. That you can look that up anywhere. And the CIA played a huge role in training and supporting a lot of these armed gangs that went and created this sort of sectarian conflict. But it was the same thing we see in Syria. It is pushed and promoted by the U.S. intelligence apparatus. And what we're seeing here, and you go back to the Cold War during that era, you go back to their opposition to communism, but really there are so many resources in that region that we later saw the U.S. try to extract and try to control. And so there always has to be a pivot to, sure, this is happening in the United States. Sure, these people are maybe don't have the right documentation, don't have all the proper paperwork, but we cannot be accusing people without any sort of process and sending them to a foreign jail. That is just absolutely unheard of. And the fact that people are trying to weaponize this depending on whatever team they belong in, and not talking about the historical context, not talking about the fact that this is our domestic policy related directly to our foreign policy, and not talking about the fact that this is just going to increase the surveillance state and it's going to affect everyday Americans via the use of this technology, the surveillance technology, AI, and everything they're using now, the intensity of the police forces that are being used and all of this money being poured in is to also get us to engage and accept and manufacture consent for any sort of regional intervention in Latin America and also Iran, because they also say that weapons are coming through the border that Iran could be trying to funnel. So it goes that far, and it is that crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, this is the time when people, they're confused right now. The people on the left, I know people on the left are very confused. They've seen two people sitting in a room together. They never thought they would. It's not the first time. I mean, just having, laughing and shaking hands and goofing around, Obama and Trump, Biden and Trump. Well, now we have Bukele and Trump sitting there with the same talking points, mocking our fake news, which, it's fake news for sure. But the fact that there's a lot of people they don't understand, like, why are they sitting in the same room? They're confused, especially on the left. And like we say, look, this is a time, like, the conversation that nobody wanted to have was American imperialism, Western imperialism, the Israel war machine, all these things that we never really had the conversation. We're supposed to be anti-war. We never talked about it. We're talking about immigration, but we're not actually talking about it. This is the moment we need to be better at this. This is the moment where we need to go, those two people aren't supposed to be smugly looking at each other, high-fiving, fist bumping, and in sync like that. This isn't supposed to be this way. We're supposed to be so the reason that, and again, people are confused because they don't know how deep that they need to go in using their critical thinking skills. So I guess that's where I'm at, thinking that maybe this could be a learning moment. Maybe this could be, if you're going to turn on MSNBC right now and think the number one problem right now is our president is racist and that's the end of the story, then maybe this is the time to wake up and say, that doesn't make sense. You're taking away due process from people. You're doing this thing that's going to be used against you next. I feel like a broken record here, but at some point people got to be like, that's weird. That doesn't seem to line up. But here we are, and very few of us are talking about it, but maybe more will start. I don't know if it's one of the conversations we were having earlier is kind of similar to this. We're talking about how we're making progress in the independent media space, but at the same time, it feels like we lose people along the way. So it's hard to see the progress when people you thought were aligned with you, that believed in these things, are now on the other side. They're going, oh no, take them away. And you're like, wait a minute, what happened to all the January 6th people? They're nowhere to be found right now. You're like, wait a minute, we were there for you. We were talking about, don't take away due process. Come on, come on, these are our rights. And here we are, and it's very few of us having this discussion. That's how I feel. Do you feel like we're making any progress here in this discussion?
I think we are, but I think it's slow, right? Like I think there are more people who are criticizing Trump, not just for this, but the censorship aspect of
Right.
going after protesters who are speaking against Israel, kidnapping people who are pro-Palestinian, disappearing them, even people who are not even radical. They're just like your regular academic pro-Palestinian type of person. And that sort of thing. The problem that we have is nuance. There's no nuance, and that's done purposely, right? As you said, Trump's racist. Okay, well, okay, let's say he is. Can we talk about what exactly he's doing that is wrong, and the actual policies behind that, right?
Yeah.
Democrats won't do that because they fall in line with that as well. They are every bit. If you want to call Trump a racist, the Democrats are just as racist, just as imperialist, just as completely awful, but in other ways. And so that's why they don't want to talk about the deeper layers of policy. So you just have a bunch of, Democrats pushing AOC, pushing Bernie now, because that's the progressive wing, and AOC 2028 is coming. And then you have the right that's like, oh, that's all woke stuff. So if you try to explain, like you and I are doing, the actual situation at hand, nobody wants to hear that, because all that social media like promotes and all the algorithms promote is, oh, Donald Trump is making America great again, and he's giving us more roads, he's tackling the crazy illegals that are coming into this country and trying to take over. Or you're hearing Trump is a fascist, Trump is a sexist, oh, look, he's ruining our democracy. And everything else that's actually a real discussion like you and I are having completely goes away. So I think in that sense, it's very hard to make progress, because these two factions, which are much closer in line than they think they are, are actually keeping us from that, and we need to not allow that to happen. We need to be better. We need to be talking about not just the regular electoralism, but we need to be talking about how this foreign policy is coming home for us, how everything we have done up until this point is coming home for us. It doesn't matter that it's Trump. It could have been Kamala Harris.
Right.
We would
Yeah.
still be seeing some of these foreign policy deals be manipulated just in various ways. Trump's not going to focus on Russia, Ukraine, but he's going to focus on solving that and creating more problems in Latin America and Iran. And then when the next Democrat comes through, they're going to go back to the Eurasia side of it. So this is all part of the game, and people need to stop looking as to who's president and acting like they're calling the shots when we know it's the U.S. intelligence, military surveillance apparatus that's truly in charge here. And it doesn't get any more obvious than with the courts and with Congress not having any power to stop. Right, with the AUMF, this is something Pasta and I always mention, and this is now all happening because we've had things like the Patriot Act, because we've had things like January 6th, and those were precedents to allow this to happen. And as this sets a new precedent, we're just going to get further and further down into the fascistic nature of it all, where we're all just pretty much becoming, subdued by this whole thing. And on that note, the real ID thing that a lot of conservatives were fear mongering about happening under the Biden regime is literally being advanced. And so are the Operation Warp Speed new vaccines for, I believe it was the avian flu or something like
it's
that.
the bird flu. Yeah.
Bird flu. Yeah. So all of these things that they didn't like and they said were fascistic are now okay as Trump is in. And so this will reverse when there's a Democrat in and they all stay silent and they do absolutely nothing about immigration, nothing about anything when it's their team. And so we have to show that hypocrisy. We have to expose that hypocrisy and really expose that tribalism and that team sports mentality that is literally causing our demise. It is literally making it so we don't advance. So we stay forever in this cycle. And then every 4 years, pretend that filling in a circle is going to magically create something out of the very essence of the corrupt and rotten core that we exist in. I mean, it's just, it's insanity if you really step outside of it and look at it.
Fee, this is you can't be any clearer. If you aren't listening, you can't hear this. I don't know what it's going to take, but it's about consistency. It's about principle. It's about courage. And we have to be consistent throughout all of our reporting, all of our investigating. And I believe me, guys, you guys out there, if you can just take that weight off your shoulder, take off those tribal goggles, believe me, it feels much better. It's a weight off your shoulders, and you can start looking at everything with consistency. And then you don't have to backstep. Then you don't have to cancel people and block them on Twitter because you don't like to have pushback. We don't have to do that because we're consistent. You can play back anything. You can play back anything I've said, anything Craig Pasta said, anything Fiorella has said, and we'll stand behind it. And if it's something that we changed our mind on, we'll stand behind that because we're okay to evolve and learn too. But we're not going to hide behind a tribe and behind a color or a person or a worshiping whoever. We're going to stick with our principles, and that's how we do it. Fee, thanks for setting that precedent for us and being consistent with all your reporting. What's next for you for Truthwire? Anything you want to leave us with?
Well, Pasta and I just had a really good show together for the first time in a long time. So if you didn't catch that, go and watch it. And I will be doing also a podcast episode with Vanessa Beeley. Should be out tomorrow for you guys at some point. And we're going to talk deep foreign policy stuff there, Russia, US, Syria, all of the stuff that's happening, Saudi Arabia, Iran, all of that. So that's a little bit on that side of the spectrum. And yeah, look out for some articles that I'm working on. And yeah, there's a lot happening on the just completely, everything's so busy all the time. So just trying to catch up. And yeah, I'm back in Moscow, so look out for more of that as well.
Awesome. Fiorella, Isabel, back in the USSR. Exactly. There she is. And doing it strong, not taking a second of a break, just going right to the next thing. We love it. Thank you so much for being with us on our 100th episode. You've been a big part, a very big inspiration for us to get here. So thank you so much. And
Thank you,
power
Matt.
in numbers.
Congrats.
Thank you.